So, welcome everyone.
Hello, hello.
Today we are sipping on some delicious Shifting Sands tea.
It is delicious.
And it's all about shifting perspectives and change. And it's going to lead right into our cosmic conversation, which is
creating our reality or creating your reality. And you're going to begin by sharing a story, right?
That's right.
All right, I'm going to snuggle up with my tea.
Let me tell you guys a little
Tell
story.
us a story.
So, this story is about a person that I've known for some years. And since we're talking about creating your reality, it took me a couple years to realize that this person was actually creating their own reality. And so, this person, he has a landscaping business and he has this huge truck and with all of his landscaping stuff. And every day it seems like he was complaining and almost anticipating something happening. Someone complaining about him being in the way or cutting him off. There was always seemed to be something. And it became like an everyday thing. And I started to think to myself, like, it's like he's creating this, you know?
Actually manifesting the issues rather than them coming to him.
Right. And it didn't dawn on me until this one day where we went to move out of my apartment. And he pulled up in his truck and he parked in someone's parking space. And as we were moving, an ambulance pulled up behind the truck and blocked him in. And I'm thinking, no big deal, you know, it's
emergency situation.
Right. And he's like, oh gosh, you know, he starts freaking out. And sure enough, this woman walks up and she was mad. And she starts cussing us out. And like she could still get into her apartment, but it was all about her. That truck was in her parking space. And she starts yelling. She actually called 911. And she's like on the phone with 911. And 911 was like, there's an ambulance there? You know, like we're not. But she's like so upset. And I can see him. He's like, this is my worst fear. This kind of stuff happens to me all the time. Why does this stuff happen to me? And I looked at him and I was like, this kind of stuff doesn't happen to me. I'm never in these situations. And I was like, you are creating this because this kind of stuff happens to you all the time. And he looked at me and he said, no, I'm not creating this. This is the last thing I would want to happen. Like, this is my biggest fear. This is what I, dread every day happening. And I'm like, that's why it's happening to you. Yeah. Because you are so hyper-focused on it. And he didn't realize it, but I saw it clearly.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it's what we focus on is what we create.
Absolutely. I think probably some of you know people like this who everything in their life is negative and bad things are always happening, and because it's their focus. And when we talked about this podcast, we talked about energy and how could we talk about energy, and we realized really the way to talk about this is how are we creating our reality by where we're putting our energy. And this is not a new concept. Everyone in this industry is talking about where you put your focus is what happens. It's what you attract. But I still think clearly it's a conversation that needs to happen, because I think we know it consciously maybe, but are we acting consciously?
Right.
Are we really watching our words? Are we really watching our actions? Are we really putting our energy where we want, or are we complaining about what we don't have or what we don't want?
Right.
Or like your friend, in such fear of it that we literally pull it to ourselves.
Right, exactly.
And so I think it's still a really important and relevant conversation to have.
And even just like with me and you, we tell people this kind of stuff all the time, but then like the other night we were preparing for this podcast and we were talking about, like you said, the energy, and I went home and was like, I started thinking like I did a meditation that was focused on like visualizing and daydreaming and creating, and we both started saying, oh, like we need to practice what we preach pretty much. Like,
yeah, not that we draw negative things to ourselves,
no.
but are we really consciously creating what we want to manifest for ourselves?
And it's easier to focus on, I want this thing to stop, or I don't want this to happen, instead of being like, no, this is what I actually want to happen.
Yeah.
And not focus on what you don't want to happen.
For sure. Like, I'm currently experiencing this shoulder conundrum. I have like this trifecta of pinched nerve and inflammation, and my bones are out of alignment in my shoulder. It's been going on for months. And I realized I was spending a lot of time going, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this. And so when we had this conversation, the next morning we were talking to each other, and I was like, okay, I am going to create a healthy body.
Right.
I am going to create a pain-free experience, and I have not had any pain since that.
And that's amazing.
That's amazing, right? So
you just shifted.
I just shifted exactly
where my focus was of your lens. Yeah,
where my focus was, for sure. And we talk about what we, people who are complaining or are tending to be on the negative side of things and trying to correct that, but then we forget, hey, we also get to be on the positive side of things and focus on what we want.
Right.
What are we creating? Are you daydreaming? I do not daydream enough. Are you daydreaming? Are you visualizing the life ahead, the year ahead? We just came out of this first new moon of the year, which is like, it was a big new moon. It was a project 10 years out, not just this year, but like big dreams. Are you doing that? Are you really putting your visioning into practice with what I want and seeing yourself? Not just I want it. It's outside of me, but visualizing having it.
And the feeling.
That's
important too.
It is.
Visualizing it and how you feel, how you will feel when it's happening. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I did when I went home. I reminded myself that I used to daydream all the time. And I used to just do it for fun or to help me fall asleep. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, no, that's creating my reality. When I go to sleep at night and I have all these images and how I would feel and the things that I want to create, the things I want to draw to myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So daydreaming.
Absolutely. I think, you think about children, they have that active imagination and they daydream and they're very joyful. And we have chalked that up to, well, we're not because we've grown up and we have to adult now. But I think really it's because we forgot to daydream. We forgot to dream what we want and to find joy in that. We fall back on this negative sort of mindset of having to adult and not to do that. That somehow daydreaming is childish and we have to put it away.
Right.
No, never put it away.
No. Imagination is so important.
It is so important. It really is. So I guess the point we're trying to make here is our energy is so pivotal in our daily life. It's not something you do when you have time to meditate. It's not something that you pay attention to on the weekend when you're not working and you don't have to do life or whatever, right? It needs to be a part of every day. Right. I'm breathing and I'm checking my energy. And I'm eating and I'm checking my energy. And I'm drinking and I'm checking my energy. It is as important as those things.
Right. And I think when situations arise, we can stop and take a look at what's happening and choose to look at it from from one point of view to the other. Like what was I talking about? The law of polarity or duality. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So like there's always two sides. There's a problem and a solution. There's light, there's dark. There's two sides of the coin. Mm-hmm. And it's what are you going to focus on, and not necessarily like ignore the problem,
right?
Or
not hyper positivity,
right? But focus on the solution more than what the actual problem is. Like focus on the positive aspect of it.
Absolutely,
yeah.
And we talked about law of attraction too in this conversation of kind of the reason law of attraction doesn't work for most people is because our subconscious programming and stories are running the show. 95% of our actions are coming from our subconscious. The stories, the patterns, the beliefs, the limitations, all those things that live below the surface that are running the show, we are not aware of. So only 5% of our action is conscious. That's horrifying to me. And I think we need to really tip the scale and bring things to light and not allow our subconscious to run the show, the fears, the limitations, and to pay attention to the energy so that we are really consciously creating what we want.
Right.
Creating the life that we want because we are conscious about it.
Yeah. And it's easier said than done. Like, you really do have to do the work and pay attention. And I was thinking about just with, like, the news, which we don't watch.
We do not. We do not watch the news ever. I haven't watched the news in 20 years.
I got to a point where I was like, my motto is, if I can't help or do something to make a difference, there's no reason for me to be bogged down or live in fear or have those things consume me. And that's what I was going to say. You know, every time, even the TV shows we watch, all of this stuff is like, you know, geared to keep us distracted or keep us in fear. There's always a tragedy, a scandal, something horrifying going on. And, like, you know, fear is a good thing when you use it for
motivating you in the other direction.
Right. Or if, like, you really need to be afraid to protect yourself, you know, the actual reason for fear. But if we're constantly living in fear, then it's not helping us.
No.
You know what I mean?
And our energy is definitely focused in the wrong direction. Right. Then if you're in a constant state of fear, then everything you do is to avoid that fear. But what that actually does is it's like a magnet. Right. So we are magnets. Whatever we are emitting, we are attracting. So if I am emitting fear, I am going to attract things to be afraid of.
Right.
And the universe, the world mirrors to us.
And it's like I was telling you the other day about watching all the horror movies.
She was a horror chick growing up. I'm not a horror person. I don't do horror.
But I had this realization of the nightmares I was having and some of the stuff that was manifesting in actual, like, my day-to-day. Like, I'm not going to go into detail about all of it, but all of these things were happening. And now that I'm looking back, I thought I was, like, having fun watching these horror movies, but I was inviting that stuff into my life. And why was I doing that? I look back and I'm like, who would want to do that? You know, but I was, like, so focused on all of that stuff. And I don't anymore. And I don't have nightmares like that anymore. And I don't feel like that anymore. You know, it's just so interesting.
I think fear is an addiction. You know, our nervous system gets accustomed to being in a heightened state of fight or flight or freeze.
That makes sense.
And it becomes the norm. Most of the population is used to being in that constant heightened state.
Yeah.
And then we feed it because we're used to that constant state. And that's not natural, and it's not normal, and it's certainly not helpful, and it's definitely not going to create the life you want. So we have to learn to step away from those things that create that sort of autonomic response, because it's not helpful. And so this is a broad conversation, obviously, and there's many ways we could approach how are we maintaining our energy. Are we maintaining our energy? Are we keeping it clean? Where are we focusing it? Like, there's so many places to begin. And, you know, I know for me, this was a slow journey into my state of life, and I very much curate my life now. But it was a step-by-step process. I didn't start out here.
Oh, definitely.
I started out like, let me eliminate toxins from my shampoo, right? Yeah. I started with one thing. And then I moved on to other things. And although the news I eliminated many, many years ago.
I never really liked the news.
No.
I don't know why. I just never... Everyone's like, you need to know your current event. Like, you know, when you're in school, you got to know your current events. You got to pay attention, like politics. You've got to, you know all this stuff. And I was like, not interested.
No. As soon as I realized it depends on who's paying for the news.
Yeah.
It's the news you're getting, then it's not really news. It's really like an opinion.
Yeah.
So I don't have to participate in your opinion.
Exactly.
So it's, anyway, back to my point of, like, it's a step-by-step process. Pick something. Pick one area of your life where you really need some energy cleanup. You really need some maintenance done, and choose that. Is it pay attention to what you're watching. What is the input? Or what are you reading, or what are you watching on social media? What is that? My social media feed is nothing but positive things. Now, I'm not on social media very much, but when I go on it, there's nothing that upsets me. And if there is, I immediately unfollow. I get it off my feed. Like, I never
100%.
subject myself to that.
100% with you. It's either funny stuff, inspirational stuff, something that's going to inform me.
Right.
It's all the things that I like want to watch.
Right. That keeps our energy going in the direction we want. So if it's not that, if it's not TV, if it's whatever, if there's, are you complaining all the time? Check yourself. Wait. If I'm complaining, this is what I'm asking to be brought into my life, right? Watch your language. Watch what you're saying. Watch who you're talking to. If somebody around you is complaining all the time, change the subject or stop talking to them. And I know that may seem really harsh, but that's where we are.
And I told you I was working on that, like, just in the workplace. It's so easy for people to get caught up in, one person complains and then the other person jumps in, and then before you know it, you're all like in this complain sesh.
Yeah. And you are really subjected to that right now a lot. How do you have any tips on how do you deal with keeping your energy clear when you're in the midst of like...
I mean, I do a lot. I do a lot of in the morning stuff, in the evening stuff when I get home. The Kai and I take a cleansing bath every night. I started doing this thing called Rose Boundary, where I put up these visual roses, which is a whole nother thing, but it's hard because it's really easy to be affected by, right now I'm in the restaurant industry, and it is nothing but drama
and complaining
and
negativity and people in really bad places.
And I've been able to look back and see the times that I was getting caught up in that and getting worked up, and I thought I was just, venting or being supportive to other people who were complaining, but I was actually feeding into it. And then that comes home with you.
Right.
So
I have a question for you. You said it was really hard, all the stuff you're having to do. Is it harder than living with the negative energy?
No.
There you go.
No, it's not hard. It's just you have to put the effort in. You have to be conscious. You have to be aware. Like you said, you have to pay attention and be aware and do the things. But it's so worth it.
Right. Because now you're like a happier person, your joy.
You can feel it. You can feel your energy shift, and you can tell when it's your energy and not everyone else's energy influence
that you're carrying around like baggage.
Really. Yeah. So
it's worth it.
It's definitely worth it.
I agree wholeheartedly. So what's our main takeaway here? Really, I think creating your reality is something you can do, and I think that may be even a hard concept to start off with. It sounds like woo woo, which I hate that word, but it sounds like so unattainable. Like, what do you mean I can create my reality? That's crazy. No, first accept the fact that that is true. It's been scientifically proven. I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to get into that. You can look it up.
But you can even do like your own experiment.
You can.
You can do something where you take one day and don't complain, or just, really, I'm trying to think of what you could do, but you know what I mean? Like,
spend one day not engaging in conversations where others are complaining.
Right.
Just don't say anything. Don't participate. And don't complain yourself. And don't allow anything that feels negative or icky into your environment just for a day.
Yeah.
Just for one day. And how do you feel at the end of that day?
At the end of the day.
Do you notice a difference? And if you say you don't, you're lying. I'm sorry.
Really?
You will notice a difference. And then you'll want more of that. And I think that's probably originally how I started, is there would be people engaging in gossip or, that complaining or whatever. And initially, that's how I began. I stopped engaging in those conversations. I didn't participate. I didn't agree, and I wasn't ready to stand up and go, don't say those kinds of things. That's not healthy for you. But I just started by not participating.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I don't have to engage in this, which means that it doesn't have to be true.
Right.
I don't have to reinforce this negative thought pattern or this bad feeling. Interesting.
So it's not true in my reality.
Right. So it's not true in my reality. And so then it began to expand from there. And, you know, I often I am not terribly young anymore, but age is just a number. But I have friends who will say to me, oh, we're getting old. And I'm like, I will literally say, do not include me in your limiting statement.
Right.
Age is a number, and I'm not old. I don't feel old. I feel like I did when I was 16. I don't look like I did when I was 16, but I feel like I did when I was 16. And don't include me in that. So I actually stand up and say, I'm not engaging in that.
Right.
And that is really liberating and freeing. And it, you know what else? It gives somebody the opportunity to change their patterned behavior. Like, why do you need to say that? That you want to feel bad? Don't do that.
Yeah, why would you say, like, I hear people say it all the time, like, oh, how are you? Oh, I'm barely hanging in there. Or,
Right.
I'm old, my body's falling apart. And it's like, well, it's going to be
if you keep saying
focusing on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it seems like such a simple thing, but even starting with, I know you helped me with this so long ago about just the words that you use, you know?
Important.
And that's something, you know, that you can start with that's simple. Because what you don't want to do is get overwhelmed with all these life changes you have to make. But
now I got to do a ritual bath every day. And I got to do kind night in the morning. And I got to do all the things. Well, eventually you'll want to do all the things. You want to because you want to take care of yourself. But begin with something.
Right.
Begin with watching what you say. How are you engaging with the world? Does it feel awful? Maybe don't do that anymore. Right. Find a different way to engage.
And even if sit back and watch other people, this is what did it for me was, you know, with that person that I started the story out with, was like sitting back and watching him and really
literally create this
his reality.
Nightmare.
Right. And it took me some time to realize that's what was happening. But when it hit me. I was like, this is real. This is real. He is actually and he couldn't fathom that that's what he was doing. Mm-hmm. But if you sit back and watch other people, you can start to notice that. Absolutely. And then you're like, that's not what I want to do.
Right.
That's the opposite of what I want to do.
Yeah.
So.
For sure.
Yeah, but start somewhere, and like you said, the more you do it, the easier it gets, and then the more you want to. Mm-hmm. You start noticing
feeling better.
The benefits of it.
Yeah. You literally start feeling better about not only like physically, if you're complaining about, physical ailments or age or whatever, but you start to feel better about yourself because the less you're engaged in that sort of what you don't want, the more opportunity there is for things to come in that you do want, because that's now what you're inviting in. And so that helps you emotionally, it helps you mentally, it helps you spiritually, and you begin to like yourself, and like it's that wheel going in the right direction, right? Instead of you being in the middle of the snowball going downhill, right? You're now like flowing with the momentum of this positive direction of creating what you actually want. And it happens. It just does. It never ceases to amaze me. And then again, at the same time, I'm not surprised.
Right.
Because I know this to be true.
Right.
But it just happens. For instance, some things have to be released. And that just recently happened. It was bittersweet, having to close the brick and mortar store. And but really what I was doing was refocusing my energy into what I really wanted, right, which was this retreat. And the minute I made that decision, everything started to happen that I wanted to happen. I didn't have to do anything differently. I didn't have to ask for anything, but my energy was going where I wanted it to go.
Right.
And now suddenly people are contacting me and wanting to do retreats here. And I'm like, okay. So it keeps getting reinforced every time I make sure my energy is pointing in the direction I want. It's reinforced by positive feedback from the universe.
And sometimes it's like something like that, like a big decision that might be scary, or, you're putting a lot of thought in, is this what I'm supposed to do? And so it's not always easy, but the minute, like you said, you made that decision and did it and freed that space, and things started, you redirected your energy, and then it was so worth it just, making that space for that.
Yeah. Creating the reality we want.
Yes. And like we were saying, even with people like us, sometimes we have to redirect it.
Yeah.
But then it's like, I always find, I just go, this is so cool. Like, this is so awesome that it just ends up working out like that,
Mm-hmm.
So start somewhere, start small, and just, it works.
It does, yeah. I agree. Start with something. What's the biggest kind of weight that you're feeling in your life? What's the heaviest thing? What are you doing every day that feels so, so heavy? And, even something is, let's take something we can't get out of, right? Okay, let's say we have to do the dishes, or we have to cook the dinner, or we have to do the human adulting peopling thing, right? But if we look at it as a chore, which is such a horrible word, if we look at it as a chore
It is.
and something that we have to do, right, it feels heavy. It feels yucky. But there's actually meditation. You can actually use those things that you have to do as an opportunity to meditate. As you're cleaning the dishes, as you're sitting in the carpool lane, or whatever the chore is, where's your energy? How are you focusing on it? Like, I get to do this. I get to sit in this line. I spent many an hour in a carpool lane, so I'm speaking from experience. I can sit here and whine and complain and bitch and moan about having to sit in this line every day for my ungrateful children who get in the car and are nasty to me. Like, it's such an awful experience, right? Or I have this time to sit here alone with no distractions and read a book or do a meditation,
right,
or do something that is not scrolling on social media, but doing some, well, that wasn't really a thing. My kids were in school. I wasn't really doing that then.
But that's what everyone does now.
That's what everyone does now. But you can take those chores and flip the script on that, right? I get to do this, and how can I turn this into something positive energetically for myself, so I'm not fighting myself.
Right. And if nothing else, at the end of it, you feel better.
Absolutely.
Just from the way you rethink it.
Absolutely.
You were making me think of when I was in Ocracoke and I went to get on my first ferry. I was so excited. And then they said it was going to be like 3 hours. And my initial response was, oh my gosh, I have to sit here for 3 hours?
That's a long time.
But then I was
There's nothing there at that ferry.
No. But then I remember going, okay, this is, I retrained the way I was thinking. I was like, this is part of my adventure. Like, even though I have to sit here, like, I can enjoy reading this book. I can look at the water, and I just made the most of it. And now when I look back at that memory, I'm like, what a good time that was. Mm-hmm. Where I could have been
whining and bitching and complaining,
talking to someone, feeling like this sucks or whatever. So I totally,
It is all about perspective.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that's what this whole podcast is about. Shifting perspectives.
Absolutely. So we'll go into shifting language, since we've sort of touched on that a little bit anyway, to start off with. Yeah. So in the language laboratory today, I'm going to bring up this phrase that I hear women in particular say all the time. And I hear screeching when people say that. It's a hot button for me. And that is when women say, I'm a hot mess. I want to take them by the shoulders and shake them and go, stop saying that. Why would you say that?
Why would you call yourself that?
Why would you call yourself a hot mess? And this goes right along with this conversation about energy. If you are literally talking to yourself that way, what do you think that's doing to your energy system? What do you think that's doing to your self-esteem, to your confidence, to your drive, to your power? I mean, you are literally...
The more you say it, the more you believe it.
The more you believe it.
It becomes...
And it's completely disempowering.
Right.
And not that we don't all have moments where maybe we could be doing life a little better than we're currently doing.
Yes.
And that's okay. But stop saying you're a hot mess. That energy is not the reality you want to create. Unless you really enjoy being a mess. If you really, really enjoy being a walking catastrophe.
That's where your joy is in
your joy is in that drama. First of all, you're not my people. Because I don't really do drama.
I don't think anyone really does. Like, even people who think they are.
They like the
drama and all that.
Yeah. So I don't have another word because I don't think this is an energy that is beneficial to anyone, right? I think it's okay for us to sometimes be doing better than other times. And that's because in the times we're not doing so great, we're learning something.
Right.
Right? That butterfly, that caterpillar in the cocoon is not having a good time turning to goo, literally decomposing. It's not enjoying itself in that process. But it cannot become the butterfly without that process. And so I think there are times when maybe we are really struggling and life feels really challenging and we are having to work really hard just to get to the end of the day. And I think that's part of the process. It's part of the journey. And if we look at it as, okay, this is part of the journey. Yes, I'm having this experience right now. And it's okay. I know I will get to the end of this. I know I'm strong enough to handle this. I can do it. It will be okay. That you have a completely different experience than flopping into a chair and going, I'm just a hot mess.
Right.
Because you're definitely not learning anything if that is your resignation.
You have to be your own support system.
You have to be your own support system. And the minute you say you're a hot mess, think how people are looking at you when you say that. Pitiful. Aren't you pathetic? You can't handle life. Like the judgment that you're inviting in that statement is really detrimental to your energy.
Right. Because you're already judging yourself and being hard on yourself, and then you're inviting everyone else to do the same.
It's the same thing. And everybody laughs, ha ha ha, it's funny. But the energy still exists, and that energy is not conducive to growth or what you want or to anything positive.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people just think they're, like you said, being funny, and they're making light of the situation, but like you said, the energy is still there.
Right.
When you're saying those things.
And really doesn't make light of the situation, doesn't change the situation at all. And I would argue that it actually makes the situation worse.
I would agree.
Because you've disempowered yourself to anything, to making it through, or for, we're all human. We all have messy moments. We all have times that we're struggling and we're challenged. Nobody is excluded from that.
Right.
Nobody gets to do life and not have that experience.
Right.
So,
but there's no need to pull more energy towards it.
Right. Right. Or use it as an excuse or anything. It's an energy that I think if you asked yourself, do you really want that energy to define you? No. So what energy do you want to define you? And maybe you just don't say anything at all.
Right.
Right?
You don't give it any energy.
Right.
You don't have to.
It's okay to be struggling right now.
Right.
I'm doing okay. It's okay to say, I'm just doing okay. I'm having a hard time right now, but I'll be okay.
Right.
Right? Acknowledging that as support system is really helpful. And I know that's can be challenging for many people, having somebody who gets it. But first and foremost, you have to support yourself.
That's right.
And that begins by don't berate yourself or criticize yourself or judge yourself. Like there's enough of that going on. We don't need to make that worse.
And like you said, some people, I mean, especially in the beginning, don't even realize they're doing it when, especially the thing just as simple as saying, I'm just. When people are like, oh, I'm just this. I remember I used to say that a lot. Or, oh, I'm so stupid. Or, it's just little things that we say to ourselves that we need to stop and realize what we're saying.
Because it has an energy. Those words have a vibratory signature that impact your body. They impact your mind. They impact your emotions. They impact you spiritually. It has a vibration, and when you say the words, which this is a little thing about sound, the most healing and powerful sound to each individual is their own voice. That's why mantras work. It's why affirmations work. It's why those toning is why it's healing, it can also be the most detrimental thing.
It can go either way.
When used in that negative way. So when you use your own voice against you, it's really harmful.
Right. It's like a double whammy.
It's a double whammy. Yeah. So remember your voice is as a healing tool for yourself. What words would you rather hear?
Right.
What words would make you feel better? Say those words to yourself.
Right.
Yeah?
That's like
I am strong. I can do this.
Right.
I will be okay. That is going to do you much more towards creating the life you want than I'm a hot mess.
Right.
Which gets you nowhere. It
Right.
makes you go backwards. You're now going down the hill in the middle of the snowball. It's a disaster.
Hot mess gets us nowhere.
It's nowhere. Yeah. So please stop using that phrase or any other phrase that in any way demeans you, that takes away your power. Because you will never create the reality you want if that is the language that you use.
Right.
To yourself or to others.
Right.
So if you don't believe you create your reality, how are you talking? How are you interacting with the world? What's your energy like? Those are the questions. And if you want to create the reality that you want, those are the things that you need to correct. Those are the things that need shifting.
Right. 100%.
100%. So speaking of shifting, we did talk about very briefly in the very beginning this delicious tea we're drinking.
Yes. The shifting sands tea. So we're shifting from, what did I say? Hot mess to hot tea.
Yes, hot mess to hot tea. I like it.
So this blend is called Shifting Sands. It's about shifting perspectives, change, and accomplishment. And when I was creating the blend, so it has white peony tea and black Assam tea. Did I say that right? Mm-hmm. Coconut flakes, chocolate slivers, Madagascar vanilla, and lobelia. And it's all organic. And so when I was telling you,
and it's delicious.
It's definitely got that multi-layer.
Oh yes, it
going
does.
on.
I'm like, is it floral? Is it sweet? Is it chocolate? I can't decide, but it's really, really good.
So I did my intuitive part of it was the balance and the seeing both sides, the perspective with the black tea and the white tea, and the chocolate and the coconut. So there's the black and the white, and there's the balance there. And then so I said balance to make clear decisions. And then the lobelia has the feminine power to halt storms and aid in disagreements. So
that'll put a halt to your hot mess.
Halt that hot mess.
Halt that hot mess with some lobelia, baby.
But when we were talking about disagreements, you said disagreements that you're having with yourself. And I'm like, oh yeah, it doesn't have to be with other people, like the things that are going on, within you. So, and then the coconut symbolizes transition also. So it's all about, shifting perspectives, all in a yummy hot cup of tea. All of that in a cup of tea. So, yeah.
It was very helpful in our conversation today.
Yeah.
So that's available as well on the website.
Right.
And I don't think I've put the link in our podcast, but I will make sure I do it this time, that I put the link so that you can enjoy there's 9 flavors at this point of the tea, and they're all so good. They're all so good. All different kinds of...
for all different things.
All different things, yeah.
But, yeah, shifting sands, and all goes along with our conversation today.
Absolutely. Do we have any parting words with that?
I think we do.
We have some words of wisdom. Ooh, excellent.
So, our words of wisdom for today are, everything is energy, and that is all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It can be no other way. This is not philosophy. This is physics. And that's Albert Einstein.
So if you don't believe us, believe the father of all Einstein even says.
We got Einstein backing us.
We got Einstein backing us up.
On
We
our-
create what we want. There's no other way.
That's
There's
right.
no other way. That's the way energy works.
Exactly.
I love it. I love it when we can back up our downloaded notions with some. For those of you who must have scientific proof,
Right? We
There
got
you
it. We
go.
got it all. We got it all here on Musings from the Mystics.
Yes, we do. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for listening.
Yes, we really appreciate everyone who's been listening, giving us feedback, and all of that. We appreciate you so much.
Yep. So, until next time, I'm Marnie, audaciously questioning everything.
And I'm Maria Elena, whimsically guiding you on your way.